Bitcoin is a bubble.
Maybe Bitcoin is a kind of a bubble.
A dangerous speculative bubble. Bitcoin has gone parabolic, so that usually does not end well.
Listen to the Matt Brown Show. This is the Matt Brown Show. Matt Brown Show.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to the Matt Brown Show. Here's Matt Brown.
Yeah. Slight technical issue with the live stream. You test all day, and then you hit stream, and it's like, what the fuck? So thankfully, we are being broadcast right now around the world. We already have north of 100 people watching us and listening to us right now. So thank you is the first thing that should be said. So I want to say thank you. I always say thank you to all my events, but this event's no different. So thank you for supporting the Matt Brown Show. This is the 7th sold-out show back-to-back now. Round of applause. Thank you. I couldn't do this event without each and every one of your help and support and time. I know we're all very busy people. I've had like 20 phone calls prior to this event basically saying, look, I'm sorry I can't make it, fish paste, etc. Sorry for you. Catch the video after the fact. But I understand that you guys are very busy, and so I appreciate you guys being here. So I'm going to let's get the rubber on the road already. We are already late, so I apologize for that. We do have Tone Vays on the line. He is watching and listening to you. So having said that, this event wouldn't be possible without our sponsors. We have 3 tonight. The first one is GT247.com. GT247.com is doing some really amazing stuff in the trading space in general. They're launching a cryptocurrency trading platform. They heard I was doing an event, reached out to me and said, hey, can we be part of the event? So I'm going to invite Paul, who's the head of sales trading, up just to come and give a 1 minute, how's it? So we actually are going to give each and every one of you a 500 Rand deposit bonus just for being here, okay? And more importantly, we're going to give 10,000 Rand away, right, at the end of this event. How this basically works is, and take out your phones because you're going to want to write this down. 2 of you are going to win 5,000 Rand, not in cash, but as actual cash that you can go and trade with. It's as good as cash, basically. And basically, how this is going to work is as follows. The link that you need to go to is gt247.com/Matt, M-A-T-T. So that's gt247.com/Matt, and you'll see a register button. Put in your information, right? It's not like a hell of a lot of information. Just do the first page. Don't do the second page, just the first page. Now, the GT247 team are at the back of the room. They are going to be watching the registrations come through. We are going to cut off registrations 60 minutes from now. What's the time now, Lorien? I don't know. Anyone? Half past. Okay. So at 7:30. So Paul's going to wave to me at the back of the room. We're going to cut off registrations. What the team will then do 10 minutes later, we're going to make the announcement. So they've got a Google random generator, and they're going to pick the 2 winners. All right? And so that's how this is going to work. So quickly over to you. Go ahead.
Fantastic. Thanks, Matt, and thanks to Matt Brown Show for having us this evening. I think the main story behind us is that we have been in the financial services sector for about 15 years. I've been working with the organization for about the last 9 years. It's been a really interesting time and experience. We are the founders or the first people to bring CFDs to South Africa, and as such, we also want to be, at the cutting edge in terms of providing people with a platform in which they can trade cryptocurrencies. So at the moment, we haven't yet launched cryptocurrencies on our platform as yet. We have a platform that has multiple instruments on it, so from commodities, currencies, and indices on the platform, and we're going to have cryptocurrencies in the next couple of months. So I think tonight, if you have any questions about trading on the GT247 platform, you can ask myself or any one of the guys at the back. I'm sure tonight's going to be a real cracker. Cryptocurrencies have been a real revolution to South Africa and the world at large. You wouldn't have paid me R1 million last year to come and talk at a cryptocurrency event. I think my surname Chakaduka itself might be the next cryptocurrency, but I think for all of you, this is a great opportunity and a great platform in which you guys can learn and find out a lot more about cryptocurrencies. So if you see the name Chakaduka, that's the next cryptocurrency to buy. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Round of applause, please. Cool. So that's gt247.com/Matt with 2 T's. Go ahead and register, and you may be one of the lucky winners. Right, so we are going to start by introducing our guests, so we're kind of rude not to. So I just want to jump over to Zoom. Tone, can you hear me? Tone.
Yes.
So how's the Tone? Tone Vays from America, thanks for being on the Matt Brown Show.
Hey guys, can you see
He can
me on
see
the
you. He
screen?
can see you. Don't can see you. There you are. Blockchain cryptocurrency. This is a real coup for us to be basically on the show, number one, but also this type of format, VCN with a live audience, has never been done before, so we're proud of that. Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Go ahead, you do it way better than me anyway.
Hello. Already heard me do the intro, yeah. Meister on YouTube. You could find me on there. Do a new Bitcoin video every single day, trying to keep people calm, get rid of that crypto noise, just buy and hold that Bitcoin, baby. It's as simple as that.
And pound that like button.
And pound that like, seriously, pound that like button right now. So everyone finds out about this live stream. Pound it.
Yeah, exactly. And on my right, we have the one and the only Lorien Gamaroff. Yeah, geez, feel the love, dude. I didn't even get that much applause. So we're going to actually start by handing over to Lorien. So we discussed before we started the show what we felt would be a good starting point, and is to get some basic principles on the table. No one in this room is an expert. There's no such thing. But we are very interested in the cryptocurrency trading space. So what Lorien's going to do very quickly is he's going to walk through some fundamentals of blockchain just to get us on the same page, and then also just kind of unpack a little bit about what we mean by a fork, because this is going to be a consistent theme that's going to come through tonight.
So if you guys have seen any of my talks or anything like that, this is going to be familiar to you. But what I wanted to do is kind of share with you the whole idea about a fork, you know, because I think we are going to be talking about that. And in fact, I just saw a tweet now that says, spoiler alert, Tone's going to say all forks and ICOs are scams. So that can set the tone, Tone. Now, what I want to do is I want to just show you quickly, 3 minutes, what is a Bitcoin, what is a blockchain, and what are the forks, and especially what's happening with BTC, Bitcoin, because that's now the biggest thing actually now. Launching a new currency is passe. What you do is you create a fork, because we know that lots of people already have Bitcoin, and by creating a fork of Bitcoin, it means that all the people who have Bitcoin already are going to get the fork. And that's the best way. That's the most important thing about a currency becoming mainstream or gaining traction, is that we need to get that currency into the hands of as many people as possible, because then it becomes interesting. If I launch a coin today, Lorien coin, no one's going to care. You know, it's going to be hard to find a market valuation for that until someone buys a pizza or something as Lorien coin. So this is just quickly, what is a blockchain and what are the forks? So if you know how a bank works, banks have ledgers, and ledgers have accounts, and accounts have balances. If you already understand that, then you know what a blockchain is. When somebody wants to make a payment to a merchant, they don't beam money over from their credit card or from SnapScan or whatever it is into the merchant's account. They send an instruction to their bank. So that is now 90% of the way of getting to understand what a blockchain is. Now, the difference with a blockchain is that we don't have the bank. We don't have an organization that holds that ledger. What happens is that ledger is now copied and distributed amongst a whole bunch of volunteers around the world who are all hosting exact copies of that ledger. And this was the innovation of what made blockchain so cool, is that you can have anonymous people all working together to make sure that that ledger stays consistent and it cannot be corrupted with people faking transactions. So this is now what we have. We have this big global bank account, really, that's not run by nobody, and that's what makes it decentralized, and that's the most important thing about a blockchain. So Why is it called a blockchain? Well, every few minutes, transactions are grouped together into blocks and then updates the database. And then next 10 minutes goes by, and we have another group of transactions that get appended to the last block of transactions. And so we have this chain of blocks, or a blockchain. Now, the thing about blocks is that the way BTC worked was when, not right in the beginning, but soon after Bitcoin started being used, the developers of Bitcoin said, listen, it's getting a bit crazy because people are just pumping transactions into these blocks and spamming the network. So what we're going to do is we're going to put an artificial limit into the block size, which means that you can't just go and put as many transactions as you like. You're going to have to start paying fees. And that's important because we need to be able to incentivize all those volunteers around the world to do this for us. They need to be incentivized by earning money. It's just like a bank is incentivized by earning fees. But now, the more popular Bitcoin became, and now all of us are starting to invest in Bitcoin and starting to use Bitcoin, now that cap, which is 1 megabyte, started becoming a problem. So what has been happening and raging for years, in fact, is how do we make Bitcoin grow so it can support all of us, so we can all start using Bitcoin and we don't have to worry about high fees. If you know, up until a month ago, I suppose, you know, there was a huge amount of fees that you had to always pay, and it took forever to get your transactions into the blocks. So we could see how by Bitcoin becoming popular, it became unusable. So this has been the big debate. How do we now make Bitcoin faster, cheaper, better, faster, and cool so we can actually use it? So what happened is that now the idea started coming along, okay, what are we going to do? Maybe what we can do is we can create new technology which makes it possible for Bitcoin to be transacted quickly, and we can keep the kind of small block idea going, because what's very important in blockchain is decentralization. And if there are small blocks, it means every one of you, if you want, can have what's called a node. If big blocks are enormous, you're going to have a huge computer to do that. So Bitcoin, the developers of Bitcoin were very motivated by allowing people to still have nodes. And this is what drove them to create, and in fact, they're busy developing right now what's called the Lightning Network. And I'm going to quickly explain to you the Lightning Network, because this is now where the contention came along and why we have these things called forks. Because up until, you know, August the 1st, there was no such thing as a fork. So the way a fork works is that what you're going to do now is this new network is going to exist out there, and all of us are going to be holding a node. We're all going to be holding a computer that is now going to act as what's called a node. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create a transaction which funds that node and puts a transaction into the block. And that means we can now fund this new technology, this new network layer with value. And because this is not part of Bitcoin, this is something what's called a second layer, it means that we can make this hyper fast. And we can start transacting with a Lightning Network. And only when we want to settle our transactions do we then need to go into the Bitcoin blockchain. So the idea around Lightning is that we now need to find people who have the same amounts of money that we want to send, and we can then basically do this. What we do is we now go and send a transaction through to somebody. And we can do this over and over, backwards and forwards, and only when we want to, we then create another transaction which then settles into the blockchain. So you can see how by creating the second layer technology, we can have this ultra fast. This is not released yet, though. This is the thing now. We're still waiting for Lightning to become live so we can all start using it and make Bitcoin usable again. So Bitcoin right now, even though the volumes are low, as soon as the volumes start picking up and the price goes up, people are going to start wanting to use Bitcoin. Okay, so this is the idea. We hope that Lightning Network is going to solve all our problems. This is the idea. If you're invested in Bitcoin right now, it's because you believe that this is going to happen and it's all going to work out. But you can imagine now this was where the contention arose, where the one part of the community said, hang on, whoa, we don't want to trust this new technology. We don't want to do that. Why don't we just try, just raise the block size? So what happened prior to the fork was that the core, Bitcoin core, they changed Bitcoin a little bit to make it so you could put more transactions into a block, and that was what was called SegWit. If you've ever heard of SegWit or segregated witness, Bitcoin Core kept the blocks the same, and they changed how transactions are created so you could fit more transactions into that 1 megabyte block. And that, coupled with Lightning Network, is now what we call Bitcoin Core. All right, and so if you're a BTC, if you're buying Bitcoin of Luna or Coinbase and it's Bitcoin, BTC, that's what you guys are doing. Now, the other part of the community, and I'm going to finish on this, said, bugger that, let's just make the blocks bigger. And this is now what's called Bitcoin Cash. Now, after this, obviously, because Bitcoin, everyone thought Bitcoin was going to die. You know, if there's a fork in the community, if there's a split in the community, it's going to ruin Bitcoin. There was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that happened just prior to the fork. But after August the 1st, when Bitcoin Cash went off and created bigger blocks, so it still was the same chain. You must remember that Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash are the same up until that point. This is now the debate.
People on YouTube are saying that they hate it when you say Bitcoin Core. You just call
there's
it
only one Bitcoin, people. There's only one Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin.
So this is the contention. Now, this is going to be an interesting thing because I don't think both are going to survive. I think one day one of them will fail because the other one will succeed. I think it's a zero-sum game. And this is the whole idea around forks. So if you've never understood what the fork was, what Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin Core, and so on, by the way, it has become polarized, obviously. You know, people are emotional.
Can we just, going forward, can we just going to go with Bitcoin, and then everything else is B, whatever it is, so like B cash, B private, be your mother, stuff
Be
like
gold. Yeah.
There is only one Bitcoin, people are shouting on YouTube.
There's only one, baby. Seriously, it's the rock.
So very quickly.
So this is the debate. You see, now it's not one-sided. There are a lot of people who actually think that Bitcoin Cash is going to be the one. And I am the contrarian, and I do think Bitcoin Cash will succeed. I have my doubts about Lightning, but we don't have to get into that right now.
Cool, thanks, Lorien. So I just want to head over to Tone.
Oh, yeah.
He's busy hammering the keyboard. So I don't know if you guys can all see this. How many of you are on Twitter? Okay, most of you. Don't you want to jump onto my Twitter page as @MattBrownZA and retweet this tweet? Tone, if you can as well, Gamaroff, Adam Meister. It's the last tweet on my page.
I already retweeted it.
Have you done it already?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's make this as educational and as large as possible. So, Tone, how's it going over there?
Good. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I'm looking at the live chat. They said I was coming in a little bit low on the volume on the live feed.
Okay, cool. I'm going to pump your volume now. Cool. That's been adjusted. So for the viewers around the world right now who, by some miracle, don't know who you are, who are you, and like, what are the headlines? Who's Tone Vays, and why should we care?
Sure. I've been in space since 2013. So I wasn't public until about 2014 when I started speaking at conferences, doing interviews, and that led me to having my YouTube channel. I became popular on Twitter, and now I kind of travel the world, speak at events. I was actually trying to come to South Africa these 2 weeks. I ran into a problem in that I didn't have enough pages in my passport, unfortunately. It required 2 pages. I didn't have that. I will be renewing my passport in a couple of months, so I'll try to make it to South Africa next year for some of the events. And people really liked what I had to say when it came to this. My background was Wall Street. I spent about 10 years on Wall Street. My first job was at Bear Stearns, so I actually lived through the financial crisis of 2008, where the company I was working at went down. My expertise is trading, and I focus on education. So I run seminars all around the world, educating people how to be better and more effective traders. I am a trader myself, though, because of my current lifestyle of travel and publicly speaking and making 2 to 3 YouTube videos a day lately, I just don't have much time for trading. I still try to make some trades in traditional markets. But the 24/7 crypto trading is difficult to do while you're also constantly participating as a public speaker. And I'm glad to be here, and I have my own views on these forks, and some of them specifically, like Bcash, and looking forward to chatting with you guys.
Cool. So before the show, I asked you just to pull together some actual charts, because you're one of the kind of experts when it comes to charting. And I know from my last event, Crypto Trader, a lot of the feedback that I got, I phoned like 100 people, 200 people after every show just to get feedback to see what you guys really enjoyed. And one of the key things was charts. Can you show us more charts? Yes or no? Yeah, lots of hands going up. So why don't we start with Bitcoin? Did I say Bitcoin? Just Bitcoin, no Bitcoin Core. And just why don't you have a look at a chart, and why don't you give us your view on like what's actually happening right now in that space?
Sure. Let me go ahead and go to screen share. Hope everything comes out good on your side. Screen share and my desktop. There we go. All right. Can you guys see that okay? Let me know.
It's good.
Excellent. Okay, so here are my charts. I am a chartist. I do prefer technical analysis over fundamental analysis. Right now, the weekly picture is totally borderline. We can really go either way from a long-term perspective. The one I've been really focusing on the last couple of days has been daily. Now, on my YouTube channel, I have started warning as of several days ago that I was looking for a 1 to 4 day correction, taking us to as low as current levels. Now, this correction started a little bit faster than I anticipated, and it has now gone down a little bit lower than I liked this quickly. So, to me at the moment, Bitcoin is at a serious critical juncture right now. If we don't reverse from around this vicinity and go back to the upside of 12,000, it could be very, very dangerous for the price of Bitcoin over the next 3 to 6 months. This is why I continue to do daily videos. It's really impossible for me to project anything at the moment. And an hour from now, I could say something completely different. This is why I do so much content right now. It was easier for me to predict the future of Bitcoin, let's say a year ago, when the trajectory was really going up. But based on the current overall look of the daily chart, we are sitting at very critical junctures that could take us back to new all-time highs or potentially take us down to new lows. And I try to warn all my followers as best I can. And this picture really changes multiple times a day at the moment. I'm not liking the current day. Now we still have about about 8 hours to go before the day closes, and we really need to reverse from here, because if we, fall another $500-600 lower, all of a sudden I'm throwing away my bullish projections to 15,000, and I'm starting to seriously consider new lower levels for Bitcoin, possibly even lower than 6K. So not much good news right now, other than you just gotta watch the charts. Anything else you guys want me to pull up besides Bitcoin? Though I will keep an eye on this throughout the next hour and a half while we're with you.
Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, Bitcoin Cash for sure.
So
Bcash.
I've been a little more prepared. I believe this is Bitcoin Cash. Let me. I just opened it up. I was looking for my old charts. I guess I will know. This is the. Let me change the time frame here. Let me go to daily and zoom this out. Yeah, this looks like Bitcoin Cash on Kraken. So here's Bitcoin Cash in comparison to Bitcoin, just to make sure, because the problem, the biggest, like I was never a fan of Bitcoin Cash. I was surprised it materialized to anything above $5 within the first week of it trading. Can people confirm that the current value of Bcash is about 0.11 to the value of a Bitcoin?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Okay, so just making sure I'm looking at the right chart. I haven't looked at these in a while. So here's the daily chart of Bcash, and to me, this does not look good from a technical perspective. Now, of course, I don't like it at all, and we can talk about that. But whenever I give analysis, I'll even talk about things that I don't like, and I'll do it as objectively as I can, even though I could be happy or upset. Like I'm talking about Bitcoin potentially going down, and objectively, and I'm not happy about it at all, because that's where I keep a lot of my value. At the same time, I can also talk about it, but in this case, chart does not really look good. Now, Bcash is pretty young, and it had several pumps. You can see how high the price went. Now, a lot of people aren't familiar with candles, so I could always make it a linear chart. concept known as the death cross. Even though it's pretty young and the 200-day moving average has just appeared, whenever the blue line goes below the orange line, and that's the trajectory of where it's headed, that tends to spell bad long-term consequences. You can kind of see it on a chart of Ethereum, only because I happen to have Ethereum up. And you can see what kind of happens when these lines cross. Here is the blue line crossing below the orange, and Ethereum from that point went from being about 0.073 and it bottomed out at 0.024. So it lost way more than 50% of its value. The last time that happened on Ethereum, they crossed to the upside of it on Ethereum, but it was already up there. So that's something to really pay attention to when it comes to Bcash. Where did that chart go? There it is. Okay. So other than that, what I look for is patterns, and what you can see is, I'm going to try not to take too long. You have this downtrending line. Now you can see how Bitcoin has a very similar problem. I have it drawn right here on a daily chart, and Bitcoin has had problems crossing this line. As I switch this chart from log to linear, the line actually adjusts to where it rejected us on the 20th of February. And then if I go back to a log chart, it's just different ways of looking at the scales. We are being rejected now. So Bcash is, of course, in the same boat with the same trend line, and we're staying below this trend line. Other than that, what I look for in charts is lower lows and higher highs. The moment a price breaks a prior low, I expect it to continue to go down. Here's an example. Once Bcash a few weeks ago crossed below this red line, if we had done this, I don't know, about 2 weeks ago on February 20th, I would have said, hey, I'm expecting a lot of downside for Bcash, because once things make new swing lows, they tend to go down. I almost kind of reject this. This was more like a fluke than the real trend. So the next level for Bcash would, of course, be the next swing low, which takes place approximately at a price of 8% of the value of a Bitcoin. Another way of looking at these patterns is to draw shapes. And guys, feel free to cut me off if I'm,
No, go ahead. Go ahead. This is great.
If I make this red, trying to be color coded here, is you can start to draw these triangles like this. And once things break below the triangle, things go very, very bad. I can also, potentially looking at a much bigger triangle, but you want to have as many points as possible. So this is a triangle to me that broke in the proper direction. Again, if I go back to Bitcoin, you can see the big red triangle up at the top, and you can see my red arrow down target saying, hey, if Bitcoin falls below this triangle, the price will probably fall from 13,000 all the way down to 7. And I think I should have drew that even lower. I was being optimistic because the target is wide. The target is the fat part of the triangle going all the way down. The fat part of the triangle was $7,000 from 20 down to 13. This really should have been $7,000 down, not 5. I was being very generous, and I probably should have just drew it down to 7. You can see the smaller red triangle that formed afterwards that once again had an arrow that met its target. So whenever I see these triangles, I take them very seriously. And for Bcash, this triangle is very massive. And the price here is about 0.14, and the price here is about 0.22. So that's 0.07. So the moment this triangle breaks to the downside, technical analysis tells me that I am looking for a a 50% drop in the price of Bcash. And that will take me down to approximately this red line. And if we fall below this red line, new metrics set in to potentially take it down lower. I don't believe that Bcash can survive. The technical picture is now in line with my fundamental picture, in that I don't understand how Bcash is going to have any innovation in the crypto and blockchain space, because all they did was double the highway. Doubling the highway doesn't fix any problems at all.
Tone, Adam has got something to say.
Well, it's really odd. You know, when Tone speaks, sometimes the price just reacts. The price of Bitcoin has just dropped an incredible amount to below $10,000, actually. There must have been just some announcement somewhere or something. I don't know what is going on, but it just dipped down to $9,847 for 1 second. But this is the reason why you can't worry about minute-to-minute prices and all that stuff. You got to think long-term here, people. There are going to be moments like this where the Bitcoin price just magically drops. So I thought it was kind of funny. We're talking about price analysis, but instances like this just happen out of the blue. And who knows why it happened? Who cares why it happened? But I thought it'd be interesting to point out, because some people in the chat are like, hey, did you know Bitcoin just dropped 3% in value? And yeah, it did during we brought it on here, this show, I guess. I don't know. But
the room's moving the price.
Yeah,
clearly.
Exactly. You gotta be a long-term thinker, and that's what I'm all about. And who knows why it just happened, but yeah, I wanted to add that. So continue.
So just on that, so I think it's an interesting thing. So one of the things that pisses me off about, let's call them people in responsible positions, in other words, influencers in the cryptocurrency space. Tone's one of them. I'm not saying he's guilty in this case. I'm just saying he's an example of. And this stuff is like rife on Twitter. Like you'll get a guy, you'll literally post a chart like the one you've just seen, and it will be, supports at price X, and like, you know, it's gonna run $DRGN, like buy me, you'll thank me later. And what you've just seen is kind of like a very micro version of that example at scale around the world. And what people do, because quite frankly, they're noobs, a lot of people in the space, like I don't regard myself as an expert at all. It's not my job to be an expert either. But my point is that people make trades based off that shit on Twitter. You know, it's like, how many of you bought Bcash or Bitcoin while you were watching that in the room? No one. See, that's good. That's good. Well done. Do more of that. Anyway, so I think it's a kind of point of departure around responsible investing, because there's two types of people. There's traders and investors. And what Adam's trying to allude to, if I can paraphrase, is basically like move slow, think long term, right? And the reason why we want to do a deep dive into Bitcoin family of coins, as I call them, Adam calls them crypto dividends, is to go deep into an actual group of coins and talk about what are the differences and what are the underlying technology and the roadmap and the founders and so forth. So you can jump in at any point.
So I look at Bitcoin as a savings account, okay? It's not something to play around with and try to, invest in other schemes with it, or, trade it, flip it, do all. That's how you lose your Bitcoin. The way you keep your Bitcoin is you do nothing with it. You just let it sit there like your grandmother did with her savings account. It is a savings account. It is the world reserve cryptocurrency. And we're talking about these forks. I call them crypto dividends, because by just holding your Bitcoin, you get this dividend, these free coins that fork off of it. You get them for free because people want to live off of the Bitcoin name. Now, the most famous one was the Bcash, and that was an unfriendly fork. But once we saw that could not destroy Bitcoin, and there was one Bitcoin, and then this new altcoin came off of it, I was like, oh my God, this is a great phenomenon, this crypto dividend thing. Bring them on. And then the next one that came was B Gold, and everyone got that one for free, and they sold it and turned it into Bitcoin. My whole thing with these crypto, and then all these other ones came, okay? And so you hear about a new one every single day. But again, it's just interest on your Bitcoin. If you control your own private key, you get this for free. And what I say is, why pay anything for what you get for free? Just get it for free, turn it into more Bitcoin. Value your wealth in Bitcoin. That is how I live I don't care if it's worth 9,000, 10,000, 11,000, it's jumping all around. I know I still have one Bitcoin. I had one Bitcoin at the beginning of this show. I have one Bitcoin at the end of this show. And the goal is to keep on getting more and more, adding to your savings account. And because in the long run, hey, this is the future right here. And we want to have the commodity of the future as much as possible because, hey, the future is in front of us. Think long-term, think the year 2020. That's the year of the Bitcoin halving. If you don't know what that is, then you should, learn what that definitely try to learn what that is. There are a lot of people who've skipped steps here in the cryptocurrency world. They've bought Ethereum, they bought Litecoin, but they don't even know how to send a Bitcoin yet. Learn how to send. This is serious stuff. They've invested in ICOs. They don't control their own Bitcoin private keys. They don't know how to send a Bitcoin from Coinbase to a Trezor. Again, if you have a Trezor, which is a Bitcoin storage device, in the long run, you're going to be able to get all of these crypto dividends that come off of it. And again, I got to stress, putting this point out there, people are forking Bitcoin. People want to live off of that name. That's how powerful this is. That is why it is the rock. It is the world reserve cryptocurrency. Sure, there's some altcoins. There's a Monero one that's coming out. But again, what you see out there, there's a new Bitcoin fork every single day. So you can get confused about it too. Just be patient. Never share your private key with some random site that says, hey, give me your private key. You'll get your free B, your free B silver or whatever, something they totally make up. Never do that. That's one of the big lessons here. If you don't know about not sharing your private key, then go back to basics. So there's my little spiel.
So
I can comment on that unless Lorien wants to get in.
No, go for Tone.
Tone, yeah.
Okay. All right, Adam, I thought you were done. So if you want to keep going,
go, Lorien. You go with Tone.
Okay.
It's your turn.
So my view on it is a little bit different. Now, I thought this Bcash thing would actually just come and immediately die. I underestimated the amount of people that were supporting it and their popularity that helped drive the price up. Now, I think that it gave, a bad impression that these forks of Bitcoin are actually going to be profitable. Now, we've had other forks of Bitcoin before, like Litecoin is a fork of Bitcoin and many others. The difference between these particular forks, like Bcash and Bgold, and I think Bprivate recently came out, I have no idea. The reason why they're different is because they kind of use the same Genesis block and the history of transactions, right? So if you had X amount of Bitcoin, you will now have X amount of the new fork. I think each one successively is going to be less and less effective and less valuable. Like, I had no intention of ever selling the Bcash and taking the Bitcoin. But when I saw a 10% value where I can sell the Bcash and increase my Bitcoin value by 10%, I jumped on the chance. Now, there's no such thing as free, okay? Like, when you put your money in a bank, they give you interest. You think it's free, it's not. When you put your money in a bank to earn that interest, that money gets lent out. So there's always a risk. Now, you don't realize the risk until there is a problem in a financial crisis to where you realize, whoa, maybe if I had cash in my house instead of having money at the bank, I would have been better off. The same thing applies here. Now, I was willing to take on that risk by increasing the value of my Bitcoin by 10%. But in order for me to do that, I literally had to take some Bitcoin out of old cold storage that I didn't really want. Like, I wanted to keep it there for like 20 years. Instead, I actually had to go out and get that Bitcoin back out. So anytime you mess with your Bitcoin, you are at a risk of A, potentially screwing it up and losing it permanently, or B, you can try to grab the fork of a coin that was actually malicious, and all of a sudden that can somehow interfere with your Bitcoin. So for example, while I was warning everyone on day one of the Bcash fork, guys, please, you have to know what you're doing. If you screw up, you're going to accidentally lose your Bitcoin. And while I was doing that live podcast, one of the live viewers decided to sell that Bitcoin, pull the Bcash out of that Bitcoin, and he accidentally sent all of his Bitcoin to me because of my donation address in the video, right? And then, and I'm busy, so a couple of days later, we eventually figured this out, and I made him sweat it out a little bit before I returned it to him, because clearly people were not listening. It wasn't that much Bitcoin. It was only like, 2 Bitcoin or 3 Bitcoin, but it was everything that guy had, and he was panicking. Now the B Gold fork, I wanted to sell that one, but I'm only willing to do it if I'm getting 5% premium on my Bitcoin. Right now, B Gold is worth 1%. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. And I don't know if it's worth it if you have less Bitcoin or more Bitcoin. It doesn't matter. Whatever Bitcoin you have, it's valuable to you. If you can only afford to have 1 Bitcoin, that 1 Bitcoin is very valuable to you, probably more valuable than 100 Bitcoin is to someone else, okay? And you don't want to take that chance, because messing around with this stuff could accidentally lead you into trouble. And all of the future forks, I think they're going to be less and less relevant, the way altcoins are becoming less and less relevant. So people have to move on to other schemes like ICOs. Just be careful and don't think of it as free money. Always think about the risks involved in getting something for nothing.
Yeah, there are no bailouts in Bitcoin. That's the bottom line here. You're taking a risk whenever you move your Bitcoin, whenever you do anything with your Bitcoin, and I think that's part of the beauty of cryptocurrency, that it is individual responsibility. So definitely do your own research, and if you mess up, you mess up. That's you lose it. But in terms of what Tone said about the forks, the new ones that are coming up, they're losing meaning. But that's why some of these have to come up with their own gimmicks that make them unique. Matt has brought up the term Be Private. There is one that just came out called Be Private. That's a privacy one. So they're going in that direction. It also was a double fork off of Z Classic. So that one sticks above the crowd. I mean, for any of these to be successful, they're going to have to differentiate themselves from the crowd. I just pull out the Be Private one randomly because it is the talk of the crypto dividend world right now, and it is sticking out above the crowd. But again, remember, take your time with anything that you do here. Learn. Don't skip steps along the way. And I can't say that enough, because if you don't skip the steps, if you learn about what you're doing, you're less likely to make mistakes. And it is good to be cautious, as Tone says, and just think long term. Do not don't make decisions when you're watching a show either. Try to focus when you're moving around a lot of value.
So I just want to add to this whole thing, because as you can see, what we've been discussing here is these things as an investment vehicle, like a speculative vehicle. And if you remember, if you've been in crypto for a long time or a longish time, a few years, back in the olden days, it was never about Bitcoin being this cool thing that you can invest in and you'll make millions off. It was always about replacing cash, providing a cash system, a digital peer-to-peer cash system for everybody. And so what's happened now is, because Bitcoin has become so valuable so quickly, and also, frankly, unusable as cash, now the whole narrative is all about, well, this one is worth investing in because, it has all these features and you're going to make this much money. And it was never about that. Bitcoin was always meant to be cash. It was always meant to be peer-to-peer cash. That's what it was described as. And so what now has happened is that the narrative is dominated by people saying, look, it's not cash anymore. It's because it's unusable as cash. And we can see the value going up. So now it's gold. Now it's a digital gold. And that's why having something like Bitcoin being slow and expensive to transact with, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, you're going to be accumulating these things and you're going to be sitting on them until you're old, and then you're going to hopefully retire. Well, not old, maybe next month you can buy your Lambo. But can you see how things have shifted as the functionality of these things start changing? And specifically, Bitcoin is important because it was the first and has a great network effect. Now we've lost the whole point of what this was meant to be. Now it's about investing. But also what's very interesting, and as Tone and Adam, a lot of the narrative, again, is dominated by very popular people in social media who are in the States or in Europe and so on. And they don't have the same problems that we have here in Africa. In Africa, not so much South Africa, of course, because, we have great payment systems, but the rest of Africa, digital payments are difficult. Financial inclusion, that's always a big thing. That's why fintech is so enormous right now. We're trying to create financial inclusion. And so those stories are never heard. People out there right now don't want something that they can invest in and they can make lots of money in the short term. They want to be able to use it as a payment system. So Bitcoin itself has kind of lost that original plan for it. Now, of course, it was inevitable because there's a finite supply, and as people get into it, and the more people get into it, of course, the value is going to go up. So we're all going to get excited about it. But eventually, there should be a saturation, and eventually, the volatility will go down, and you won't be able to make huge gains or losses over the long term, and it will function as cash. So what we're really doing right now is we're trying to bet on a system that will eventually function as cash. That's all Bitcoin is ever going to be. It's not, I disagree that it's going to be this gold thing, because at the end of the day, if you are accumulating something and sitting on it, that's not what makes it valuable. You know, using it makes it valuable. If you take something and you use it every single day, it's valuable to you, and that's going to be what you should accumulate. So this investment is nice. You know, it's nice being an early adopter because it means you can take a punt and you can, you know, in this honeymoon period where none of these currencies are being tested in the market. I mean, at the moment, the only time and you ever use a currency is when you're on an exchange. But eventually what's going to happen is products are going to come out that where you can now go and buy your groceries, or you can send mobile money to your relatives in a different country. And that's when the real test is going to happen. Now, apart from trading analysis, I'd love to hear Tone. I mean, actually, I follow you, Tone, so I know your opinion about Bitcoin Cash and all these things. But apart from the technical analysis around a currency like Bitcoin Cash, what are the fundamental reasons that are making you so, and Adam as well, so against something like Bitcoin Cash? Now, unfortunately as well, you know, the people who are pushing Bitcoin Cash are all pretty infamous nowadays. You know, the guys like Roger Ver and Craig Wright and so on. And so, you know, it's become this cult of personality that really what you are doing when you adopt Bitcoin is you're saying, because the vast majority of us don't understand the technicals around it, we're saying, and I don't mean trading technicals, I mean technology. What we're doing is we're voting on the teams that are now pushing that technology. So when the vast majority of you who are, I don't know how many of you are into Bitcoin or Bitcoin Cash, but I'm pretty sure the vast majority of you chose Bitcoin because you thought, well, the developers are trustworthy, they've been pushing us so long, they seem smart, they've all got beards, so maybe this is going to push us into the future. But I bet you none of you thought, well, hang on, let me critically assess the technology here. And do you know what's going to happen? And mark my words on this, is that the customers, the people that eventually start using these technologies are going to choose the ones that are easy, cheap, and convenient. And now, yes, of course, we hope that Lightning comes rapidly, and we hope that it's cheap, easy, and convenient, specifically convenient, because if it is, then it'll become the one that is dominant. But in the meantime, what's happening right now, because Bitcoin Cash is just Bitcoin, but faster and cheaper, that companies like BitPay, like Coinbase, like Zenpy are going to be creating products around Bitcoin Cash. And then when people want to go and get into the space, you guys are early adopters, but there are a lot of people still coming on their way. They're going to want to accumulate cryptocurrency. What are they going to find in the market? Well, the ones that are cheaper and quicker. They want to buy their groceries. They want to use the ones that are going to be of low fee. So yes, Lightning might come in a year's time or 6 months' time, we don't know. But there might be too late to catch up. So again, you know, this is not a case of choose your team, choose your developers, because that's really what you're doing right now. Critically assess something in the marketplace, and that's where the real value is going to be ascertained, and then we're going to see, you know, who's wearing no clothes.
So Tone, what are your views there? I mean, how would you like to respond?
Sure. You slightly dismissed. I'm going to briefly mention the team. So can you? I mean, I can name those bearded people in a Bitcoin Core that are currently programming Bitcoin. I can probably name at least 20 people off the top of my head that are contributing to Bitcoin, and these are the people I consider smarter than me, and I trust them in their computer engineering. Can you name any people that are supposedly creating this innovation and Bcash? And I don't want to put you on the spot because I can probably name 2 or 3 of them, and I didn't respect any of them. Well, one of them I never heard of before Bcash came out. The other 2 I knew of way before Bcash, and I didn't respect them then either, so I'm not surprised they went off the program for Bcash. I don't see how there can be any innovation out of these forks because I don't think there's any competency in those developers. All the innovation is going to come out of Bitcoin. And I understand that Bitcoin may not be as fast right now. Well, at the moment, it's as fast, but in general, there are times where Bitcoin isn't as fast as people like, and it's not as private as people like, and it's not as cheap as people like. What people need to understand is that Bitcoin isn't simply competing in payment as a currency. It's not, because no matter what Bitcoin does, no matter what Bcash does, government currency can always be cheaper and faster, because centralization is always technologically cheaper and faster than decentralization. Decentralization is expensive. What decentralization brings you is censorship resistance. And Bcash just can't compete with that, because it's nowhere near as decentralized as Bitcoin is. It's just not. It can't be, because there aren't as many people involved. It's a much smaller group. So the value of Bitcoin is the fact that for the first time in human history, you can own an asset that is unconfiscatable. To me, that is the number one property of Bitcoin. Number two property of Bitcoin, to me, is to send a censorship-resistant payment. You can pay someone anywhere in the world, and no one can do to stop that. Now, sometimes this payment is going to be expensive, and sometimes this payment is going to take a little while to get to the other side. But nothing else will compete, because that's the underlying technology. That is what the core developers are fighting to maintain. Because if those properties are in danger, then none of this crypto makes any sense, and it's all totally useless. Now, once those properties are fully solidified, and the fact that it was difficult to get SegWit in, the fact that Bcash did fork off, it only solidified these properties of censorship resistance and decentralization. After that, you want to scale for day-to-day payments in the safest possible way to not endanger the core properties of Bitcoin. And the people that are forking these things, they don't. Their focus is to give you a currency. Their focus isn't to bring you something revolutionary, and that's the big difference. And that's why I'm surprised that Bcash has even lasted this long. And the only reason that it has is because it has very influential, popular people pushing it, which is very political, because the other side doesn't have the kind of resources and the kind of media outlets and to push an agenda like the Bcash side and other forks. So that's kind of my view on it.
So, Tone, what you did there was you fell into that trap again. You appealed to authority. I mean, you said that you don't know the developers on Bitcoin Cash, and you do know the developers on Bitcoin Core. But let's move on from that, because you mentioned a very important thing. But we can put that aside.
The appeal to authority.
Yes.
Do you appeal to the authority of your doctor, right? Like when your doctor gives you advice. Look, I appeal to authority of the nuclear scientists that are building a nuclear reactor to make sure that I don't die if I'm using the energy from that nuclear reactor. So I don't see it as obedience to authority. I see it as listening to the experts in something that I am not.
Okay, so now let's talk about the decentralization, because that is basically the crux of all this. This is what the whole point of having small blocks is about. And this is the mistake. Now, a lot of people think that the only way Bitcoin will become decentralized is if it has maximum decentralization. So I've termed this thing cypherpunk maximalism, where everybody has a node and then you can make these uncensored transactions. And that is the mistake. This is where Bitcoin has made the mistake, Bitcoin Core. Because at the end of the day, you don't need maximum decentralization where everybody has a node. You need sufficient decentralization. Now think about this. One day, when you go to a store and you go and swipe your credit card, you don't care if the payment goes through or not. You just want to make sure that you get out the door with the goods. If you get out the door with the goods, if that transaction fails, hey, you don't care.
Ripple.
Now, this is exactly what's going to happen in a world of Bitcoin, is that if Bitcoin does become a currency that people use day to day and pay for things, it's not going to be the customer that is all worried about their transaction confirming and getting into the next block. It's going to be the merchant. The merchant is going to say, whoa, I better make sure I get that transaction as soon as possible, get it into the block and confirm it as quickly as possible, because I want the money. And this is actually what's going to happen in the future, is that merchants and businesses are going to be the ones that are holding the nodes and so on. Not you and me in our bedrooms having a Raspberry Pi running a node. We don't care. If we are making payments, the issue is not going to be that whenever I want to make a payment, somebody's going to block that payment. That is an edge case that is hardly ever going to be on our minds, that I want to buy something and no one's going to accept my money. But the vast majority of use cases when there are transactions going on are the merchants, the people receiving the money. They want to be able to confirm that transaction and capture that transaction. So ultimately, what you're going to see in the future is that merchants are going to be holding those nodes. Businesses that want to get paid are going to be holding those nodes. And that's going to create the sufficient decentralization that we need to make sure that a government or whoever can't come down. And by the way, if a government wants to come down in Bitcoin, I can assure you they will. You know, if our Reserve Bank says, sorry guys, Bitcoin's illegal, anybody transacting with Bitcoin, you're done for. Okay, yes, there'll be guys, local Bitcoins and so on mucking around, but it's not going to be the value that we're going to see. So the mistake that Bitcoin Core is making is that they are having that cypherpunk mentality. In other words, they want to be able to have full control over everything that they do. But all of us, we are not. We're not going to care. As long as when I go into the shop, I send my transaction and I walk out of there. The merchant is going to be the one, and that's where the sufficient decentralization is going to happen.
I couldn't disagree more. I couldn't disagree.
Yes. Why?
Because what you're advocating is, I'm a merchant. I actually own a physical business, and the merchants won't care. The merchants, like you said, first of all, the merchants aren't going to want to be responsible for this. The merchants are going to outsource this node to the point of sale machine. And the point of sale machine is going to outsource this node to the biggest company that wants to be responsible for that. So if your scenario plays out, there will only be one node. It'll probably be Google. And that's it, right? And the way that Bcash is going about that vision is to make it so expensive for the average person and even the merchant to own a node. I personally asked this question at a scaling conference to the Bcash developers. And I said, right now, I am running my own node. My own node is running on a 6-year-old laptop, and it cost me like $200, and it's perfectly fine, and I can validate my own transactions. So I asked them, what happens to the guy that wants to validate his own transactions by only spending a few $100? And they laughed at that question, said, well, that's going to be impossible. The fake Satoshi, CSW, he has stated that if you can't afford a $20,000 node, then you shouldn't be part of the system. That eliminates 95%, if not more, of all merchants that can afford a $20,000 node. I mean, you're literally talking about complete centralization once you go that route.
And the room goes quiet. Is that equivalent to dropping the mic? I'm not sure. Rebuttal, actually, no, what? Adam, let's go. What are your views on what are the two? Do you agree with Tone? Do you agree with
this debate is
Lorien?
this debate is so played out. We've heard it a million damn times now. I mean, how many more times do you guys got to hear this argument? I mean, it's Bitcoin is for me. I like Bitcoin because it is unconfiscatable. Governments I hear are taking people's land recently and stuff. They can't take your Bitcoin. They can't take your Bitcoin. Remember, and that's a present day value no matter what continent you're on, because there are continents all over this world where their government's trying to take what is not theirs. They can't take your Bitcoin. Just remember that.
Round of applause for Adam.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to open up the floor to get some questions from you guys. So can I just get a hand or two up in the air for questions? I'm going to come give you a mic. Okay, do you want to just come forward, Rick? Give me a hand. Mike. Yo.
Hi, Tone and Adam. I want to know, how long do you wait after a fork before you cash out that forked money into Bitcoin? Do you wait like for 5% or 10% increase in the forked coin? Or do do you just hold it for a specific time?
Now, I wouldn't wait for a specific number. I would wait until you know how safe it is, if there's an easy way to do it. Now, the first two ones, Trezor provided a very easy splitting mechanism. So that's what I wait for until I can do it on my, because I keep the bulk of my Bitcoin on my Trezor. And again, people, if you keep your Bitcoin on an exchange, you really don't own your Bitcoin. So even if you hear these things, hey, it's easier to get your crypto dividend if you keep your Bitcoin on an exchange, it's not worth it. It's not safe. So I don't wait until a specific number. I wait until I know it's totally safe, and that my Trezor provides the splitting device for me. Basically, that's what I wait for now, me personally.
I'm with Adam. Only additionally, I will wait till about 5% because I think at 5% is where I'm willing to take on the risk of personal screw up and or the risk of time, because it takes time. I remember I wasn't prepared to sell my Bcash, and I didn't have my Bitcoin consolidated. And I literally stayed up all night because I saw the price and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think this thing would be worth anything. And it's worth 10%. And I had no idea how long it's going to stay that way. So I literally stayed up all night, like 12 hours it took me to get the stuff out and then sell it. And that's a lot of time. That's productive time. That's time I could use to make like 2 more videos for my followers and get them more, get them to understand the space better. So I think at 5% is my limit to actually get out and get this stuff done.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim. I'm from Speckle. Lorien, I just have a question for you. I do agree with you that Bitcoin needs to become more efficient. But everything you described to me, I kept thinking to myself, well, he's talking about Ripple, right? Because that's more efficient and it's fast and you can use it for payments. So what are your views on Ripple? Because the banks own that, but the merchants will be happy because they already use banks, and or you can use something else that's a crypto, it's owned by banks. So why not just go for Ripple?
Because Ripple isn't a currency that you can use like that. Ripple is specifically meant to be an interbank settlement protocol. So I don't even think they can call themselves a cryptocurrency. I mean, you can invest in it, but you can't do anything with it.
But if they decided you could?
Well, then they're going to be competing with other currencies, and that's the point. It's not that I'm saying that Bitcoin Cash is never going to be touched. Of course, Litecoin and all these currencies out there could easily supersede any of these currencies. So the question is now, if you guys are going to be investing in these things, you're going to have to think, well, which one do I think is most likely? Unless you're a day trader and you want to just flip them out in and out. If that's your game, then cool. But at the end of the day, you got to look at. There's a few things you can look at. I mean, and network effect is important. How widespread is this currency? What is the support for it? And BitPay doesn't support Ripple, or doesn't support Litecoin, but it now supports Bitcoin Cash. So as soon as you see a merchant adoption, as soon as you see users using it, and it's available and it's functional, that's an indication this is now creeping up. But Bitcoin Cash could fail. There might be one of these anonymous developers that cock up, and then the whole thing's a mess. But until that day happens, it's not that it's a mystery. You can see how these currencies are developing and how they are growing. And Bitcoin Cash surprised Tone even. Why is it still around? Now, of course, there are influential people out there pushing it, so that definitely gives it mind share and market share, and that's a metric you can use too. I mean, these guys like Roger Ver and Craig Wright have followers. And of course, it's not about the followers. It's not about the people either. It's about the technology, and that's going to prove itself. And you know what? Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash has proven itself for the last 8 years, because Bitcoin Cash is Bitcoin with bigger blocks. And so the fear is that it's going to become this unsustainable thing where suddenly you have gigabyte blocks and terabyte blocks and so on. But that's a fear. Right now, everyone's saying, no, big blocks will never scale. It's never going to work out. Never, never, never. How do you know? Let's see. And so far, 8 megabyte blocks seem okay, and 32 might seem okay. But it is something you should be educated about, and you should keep aware of. And don't write anything off just because you don't like the people who are pushing the agenda.
Just your name and then your question. Thanks.
Hey, this is Abe from Sun Exchange. We can all see that the prices of the altcoins are all related to the Bitcoin price. I mean, they track each other. There's a big correction. The Bitcoin market, they all adjust. So that shows that Bitcoin is the base currency. So if Bitcoin fails, the whole thing fails. So if Bitcoin doesn't succeed, then Bitcoin Cash doesn't succeed.
Well, if it fails because there is now universal clampdown from regulators, yes, everything will fail. If there is a flaw in this idea of blockchain, yes, everything will fail. So those are the kinds of cataclysmic type things you're talking about if Bitcoin fails. But if Bitcoin fails, just because nobody likes it and it's inefficient and so on, it doesn't mean that they all fail. You know, it could very well be that you start seeing that chart. I don't know if that was a chart of Bitcoin versus Bitcoin, BCH versus BTC, but they are kind of uncorrelated, you know, or at least inversely correlated. You know, it seems that we see people flipping in and out. So I don't think that if Bitcoin fails, just because Bitcoin fails, everything else is going to fail. If Bitcoin fails because there's a flaw in this whole idea of this decentralized cryptocurrency, yes, it all fails. But until that happens, it's anyone's game. And it comes down to the market. The market is going to be the one that decides. What is the one that's useful? What is the one that's cheap? What is the one that's convenient and efficient and I can get now and I can give you $5? Because remember, and it's a cliche about Africa being the place where cryptocurrency succeeds, but it's true because we have 80% of the people in Africa unbanked. And they would love to be able to have a digital payment. I mean, we know how mobile growth is massive. It's growing. So at the end of the day, we're going to see significant volume of the cheaper currencies and more effective currencies in Africa. And we should look forward to that.
Can I add to that a little bit? Comment on it. So to me, if Bitcoin fails, then the store of value property of the blockchains has failed, because the most amount of money that people entrust is on Bitcoin. Like, here's another example, right? Like, if the internet would have failed in the early days, let's say in 1999, right? Let's say the internet failed and not all the .coms, then probably for another generation, people would not be quitting their jobs and putting their business on the internet. So to me, if Bitcoin is to fail, we lose the store of value property. Like, I don't care what crypto is being transacted in. Now, obviously, I only accept Bitcoin as payment. I don't really accept other currencies as payment, but occasionally I have someone that says, hey, can I pay you in Litecoin? Hey, can I pay you in Monero? And I say, yeah, sure, because I can just convert it, right? So, but I store my value in Bitcoin because I entrust in the Bitcoin network. If that fails, I can't see how the world until like 10, 15 years from now, until confidence comes back. Because if Bitcoin fails, any other blockchain can fail. And you can use it for your payments, but there ain't no way you're going to hold it. You'll be better off converting whatever other crypto you want to use as a payment immediately to the rand, or immediately to the dollar, or immediately to cell phone minutes. Because if Bitcoin fails, that means anything else can fail at any moment, and you're safer in a government currency long term.
Sorry, just
until confidence comes back, and that's a big problem.
Cool. Something really hectic's happening in the crypto space.
Yes.
Like right now.
So here we go. It's so funny. During this event, we've had a major event or a major rumor going on. All the cryptocurrencies are dropping in value right now. If you look, the rumor is that one of the most popular exchanges, Binance, has been hacked. This is why this is happening. But this is now calm down. Everyone, I have lived
your phones away.
I have lived through this many times before. So the market always reacts insanely to these rumors. Oh, this third party has been hacked. It's just a third party. If it has been hacked, if it has really happened, then yeah, that's bad for Binance. It's bad for the people who do not. I just said before, you have to control your own private key. You do not store at these exchanges because so many people use it as a storage mechanism. When this type of thing happens, everybody panics, everybody gets scared. But trust me, this is just something that's happening to a third party. Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies are just as they were 3 hours ago. So this will pass. I've seen it happen with Bitfinex had a hack 2 years ago. Again, there's an initial panic. We learn what really happened, and then things go back to normal again. So this is, if people have been wondering during this presentation, what the heck is going on? Well, this looks like what the heck is going on.
So how many of you had your crypto actually on Binance?
Okay, then come on, guy. You
Come
see, that
on,
wasn't
man.
good.
That was really.
So we don't know if it's
like-
really happened or yet. I mean, you're going to have to look into this, everyone. This is a
So
lesson.
it's
There are no bailouts. This is where the big boys play.
I have
This is where the big
a
boys
better
play.
question. How many of you hold a Binance token
How many of you held a Binance token?
as an investment?
There's like five
few.
hands, 6 hands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lesson: don't leave your crypto on exchanges if you don't have to, unless you're actively trading and you have stop orders or something happening. So, cool. Fazam, can we get a question from you, my man?
So thanks very much, guys. My name is Farzam Isani.
Oops. Can we give him that mic? Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. That's better.
Hi, guys. Farzam Isani. I got a question that's actually aside from the debate. As for Tone about trading. So Tone, you say that you're into technical analysis a lot, yet you also talk about holding Bitcoin long term. From my perspective, technical analysis is kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you have enough people that kind of believe in it, then it happens. You know, you see the bounce and everybody sees it gets to that point, and it's, I mean, I'm really exaggerating here, but it's like a global pump and dump based on a code of technical analysts to kind of see the trends. So obviously it happens and there's a lot of value there, but I wanted to just hear your views about when you look at technical analysis versus when you actually start looking at fundamental analysis over the longer term and how that affects your investment decisions based on your timelines.
Great question.
Sure. That's actually a good question. So here's how I look at it, right? Like to me, every company, let's say in the S&P 500, right? Like every major publicly traded company, it has had due diligence, and it's a legit company. Now, granted, there are occasional issues, you know, WorldCom and even Bear Stearns, where I worked. Obviously, even in a major large company, Enron, things can go very, very bad, right? But the probability of that happening is very, very small. So the history of, and I used to hate regulation. After being in the crypto space this long, I have a whole new outlook on regulation. But the regulation, because it's so difficult to get to an IPO, to be a publicly traded company, I'm expecting those companies to be legit. Now, when it comes to the crypto space, the only asset in the crypto space that I consider investment worthy is Bitcoin. I don't think there is any other asset in all of crypto that is investment worthy. That means for me, the probability of any other asset other than Bitcoin going to zero is incredibly high. Now, it's also possible for Bitcoin to go to zero, and it's more possible for, let's say, Bitcoin to go to zero than Google stock or Amazon stock. Like, I'm not expecting those to go to zero. But it's possible for Bitcoin because there could be like a technological problem or a confidence loss, something like that, right? But the only asset that's investable is Bitcoin. So to me, Bitcoin has fallen into the same category as gold, oil, silver, Google, Amazon, and hundreds of other companies. Also currencies, right? Like the euro has been around for a while. You know, again, your currency, you can trade the rand against the dollar, right? So these are all investable and tradable assets. Now, within the portfolio of investable and tradable assets, if you have studied trading, if you learned technical analysis, you can then raise the amount of your portfolio by beating the market if you're good at it. And remember, maybe 5 to 10% of traders are capable of beating the market. And by beating the market, I mean beating, let's say, 10% a year return of the S&P 500. So all I did was add Bitcoin into the category of assets that I consider to be investment long-term ready. Now, because of the style of Bitcoin trading and my current lifestyle, it makes it difficult for me personally to trade Bitcoin because of this 24/7 hour market. Like here, like the perfect example is I'm sitting here talking, and if I was an active trader of Bitcoin, I would actually literally tell you guys, I'm sorry, goodbye. I have to go trade because of what's happening in the environment, right? So I have chosen not to trade Bitcoin actively, and I still trade traditional markets in other ways that don't interfere with my current lifestyle. When I'm tired of being a public person, I might go back to active trading. So this is the difference, right? Like I'm trying to teach an expertise of trading for people to do it if they want to do it, but I only advise to technically trade on assets that are long-term investment ready. Now you can choose to go trade the altcoins. You can choose to go trade the ICOs. You can also choose to go trade penny stocks. Even when I was actively trading, I would never advise anyone to trade penny stocks because those companies are not there. I don't see any potential in any of the penny stocks, long-term potential. So I never was an expert in trading them. I never recommended people trading them. Only trade stocks that have a higher market cap than a penny stock. And to me, all of these altcoins, all of these ICOs, they're just penny stocks. And because the value of that holding, even during your 3-hour trade, can go to zero. And another reason why I don't trade is because of what just happened with Binance. I would never risk my capital on an exchange like that. Like that's another reason why I stopped trading, is because my Bitcoin is too valuable to me to risk on an exchange. But my expertise is trading, and I have a 15-year experience in that. So I might as well educate people, and I find value in that personally.
Cool. Just before we carry on and take another question, we're going to close off registrations for your eligibility to win the prize in literally a few minutes. So if you haven't registered on gt247.com/Matt, M-A-T-T, do that now. We're going to close off registrations and make the announcement in about 10 minutes. Okay, cool. Go ahead. Just your name and the question.
Hi. My name is Rocco. I'm from the Bitcoin Training Institute. I'd like to change the direction a little bit here, if you don't mind. I'm from a technical background, and so I follow the blockchain very closely, and I'm very interested in what this technology can do for us. One of the things that I've picked up is that there's a move, well, a future move towards not using blocks and not using a chain, but a newer way of running cryptocurrencies. And I'd like to know your views, guys, on that. I think, Lorien, maybe because you're more in the technical side of it, maybe you're the right guy to give us a bit of a view on that. But I'm very interested to know where we're going with this. Is that real? Is it feasible? How would this influence where we are going?
Well, there are a lot of different new types of, like, not blockchains, but technologies that achieve this decentralized consensus thing. Think about IOTA with Tangle. There's a lot of these different things. But, at this stage, it's difficult to say, because we don't have what we have now in these cryptocurrencies where we have people actually using them. Even if you try and use IOTA or something, you're going to fail. There's no one actually really using them the way they're meant to. So of course it's interesting. I mean, it's always nice to have new technology to play with. But I at this stage, I have no reason to think that any of them are either going to fail or succeed. So, but what I can say is that because I've done many years of consulting to organizations, banks, and so on around blockchain, because obviously blockchain is a big deal, and companies are trying to figure out how they can use blockchain for all sorts of cool, interesting things. And it's my belief now, of after many years of building POCs and advising and consulting to these companies like banks, that I think the vast majority of those use cases that people are applying blockchain to are going to fail. Because at the end of the day, blockchain has a very narrow set of specifications for that make it practical to use and create business cases for it. And I'll tell you some of those. It's very important when you have a blockchain environment that, first of all, you don't have a controlling entity. It's decentralized. Now, for all these different blockchain companies that are trying to do things on blockchain, at the end of the day, they are a controlling entity. And even if you have a consortium of controlling entities or a cartel or a group or whatever, that makes it not decentralized, and the blockchain is a bad use case. Another thing is that in a blockchain, you want untrusted participants. You want anonymous participants. You want peer-to-peer exchange. So all these different things, when you actually bring it into an organization, you realize that blockchain is the wrong thing to apply. So I think that every use case that I have ever heard right now that wants to use blockchain will fail. Because, and Corda is a good example, R3. Remember R3 tried to bring those banks together and use blockchain, and then what they've created is something that's not blockchain. They say it's inspired by blockchain, but that just means they started off with blockchain and they realized it wasn't the right thing. So I think that all these other new technologies, they're cool and exciting. We're going to see how they pan out. We don't know, but I'm pretty convinced now that the only real business case, because that's what's elusive in blockchain, is currency. You know, this decentralized cryptocurrency, and that's why I've decided now to like focus all my attention on just creating cryptocurrency value. In other words, products around cryptocurrency.
Adam?
I don't know. There's so many different flavors of the month. The next technology that's going to be better than blockchain. I mean, you hear everyone's trying to surpass Bitcoin. Everybody wants to be the next. It's great. It's the free market, but it seems like there's a new flavor of the month. IOTA was one that was very popular. That was when you asked the question, it's the first thing that came to my mind. IOTA, because people are like, oh, it's beyond the blockchain. I mean, let's prove it. Let's see it. I mean, right now, traditional Bitcoin blockchain, that's what's dominating. I'm sticking with that. These flavor of the months, I've seen them come and go.
Okay, a question from someone else? Cool, this chap here with a white shirt. Just pass the mic back if you don't mind, thanks. Just let me know when you're ready to do the announcement. Okay.
Hey guys, Michael Sanod here. This is to Adam and Tone. How do you see the usage or the longer term adoption of cryptocurrency in the first world versus the developing world? Do you see a difference? And if so, what is that difference going to be?
Yeah, well, I think in the developing world, they need it now. In the first world, you know, in North America, we don't necessarily need it. The government isn't taking our valuables. We can easily transfer money across borders. You know, when I was in Zimbabwe, you can't get money out of the country. A bank cannot send. You just can't get your back. You got to wait in line to get cash for a day and then hand it to your brother and he'll drive it across the line into South Africa. They need it now. Back in the United States, we don't need it. We have credit cards. We can send bank transfers. We can do everything imaginable. So that's the difference I see. That in the developing world, it is necessarily right now. It's not in this. It's a great thing to have. It's a great way to protect your wealth and increase your wealth in the first world. But it's not a necessity.
Cool. So just following on from that, though, so in order to get wide-scale adoption in developing nations, obviously we're extremely price sensitive, right? Like Bitcoin before the SegWit implementation, a fee could be as much as a guy earns in a month. So how do you see that adoption, bearing in mind how price sensitive the developing nation is?
Well, I mean, if you need to get your money out of the country, you're not going to care about what the fee is. I mean, if you're in desperate states, if they're coming to, I mean, if you're stuck, you're going to be able. People were paying in Zimbabwe. They were paying a premium for cash. I mean, that's how I extrapolate it. I mean, if people are willing to pay more for cash than for the digital version, then I mean, people are willing. If you're in desperate states, you're going to be able to, willing to pay like the equivalent of the value to get it out of the country if you really necessarily need it. But Tone was about to say something.
Yeah, that was actually always my point when I debated Roger Ver on this topic a year and a half ago. That was my point. The fee, when you have to use something, the fee is not going to matter. And at the same time, you have a lot of smart people trying to make sure that fee stays very, very, it eventually goes down. But it's very interesting that there's huge differences between how Bitcoin can help the developed and the developing world. Now, obviously, everyone says, well, Bitcoin can help bank the unbanked. Well, sure, in the third world. In the first world, where I am in America, Bitcoin is actually debanking the banked, because if you use Bitcoin too much and in ways the government doesn't like, the bank is going to cut off your bank account, right? This has happened to businesses. This has happened to people. So it's actually working the other way around in the first world. The most important property of Bitcoin, like Adam said, is the ability to get your value out and go cross-border. So basically, it's not Bitcoin that's going to bring jobs. It's not Bitcoin that's going to build businesses. What happens is an entrepreneur with funding can build something good. Now, this is, again, like, I personally do not like ICOs because you don't know if that entrepreneur is, knows what he's doing, okay? And this is why I don't like soliciting unqualified investors. However, if you have resources, if you are a qualified investor, and the only thing that makes a person qualified investor is a person that is borderline rich and has money. And that person can now speculate with that money to fund other speculative projects that can potentially lead to amazing innovation. So my view is, if the first world cracks down too much, Bitcoin provides the perfect means for a person with money and with resources to move that money to more of a third world country where he can start that business. And now, as long as that person is using his own money, or as long as that person is getting that money from other rich people that can afford to lose money, that person can create any kind of business that they like from Ethereum on down, okay? My problem comes when they try to solicit people that don't really know what they're doing. So that would be great for the third world if people can easily move their hard-earned money or money that they've earned from prior ventures legally. They can go somewhere else and they can start that business and create jobs. Because at the end of the day, your nation and its and the GDP of that nation is only as good as the smartest people in that nation and the entrepreneurs and the businesses that create jobs for other people. And the more governments stifle that, the worse. But I do agree with governments on, hey, you can't just have random high school dropouts soliciting the entire internet for money in an unregulated way. That's not good. That only ends in infinite number of Ponzi's.
Who's going next here? You're hijacking the mic, dude. Very quickly.
Sorry, I just loved what you said about in the first world, Bitcoin's trying to essentially get rid of banks. Do you think in the first world, if Bitcoin succeeds in getting rid of banks, that eliminates the need for monetary policy, right? So without banks, you don't need monetary policy. Do you think we'd ever reach that point?
I don't think so. I don't think, okay, so there's a two-edged sword, right? So people seem to think that we can have multiple altcoins, like all of these things can compete. I don't think so. I think there'll be just one Bitcoin, one blockchain. Now, at the same time, do I want Bitcoin to be the one and only currency in the world? And the answer is no, because now we're talking about a one world currency, and that's probably not going to end very well for the world either. So what I envision is, if Bitcoin continues on its path, and I like the path that Bitcoin is currently going on, it will cannibalize all the other altcoins. And every single person in every single country will have a mathematically stable alternative to use as A, store of value, and B, as the backup currency. And what this will do is, hopefully, it will make governments more responsible with how they spend other people's money, with how they print money, and with what they do with that money. So my personal goal is, I don't mind having government currency that they can print, but they have to do it responsibly. And if Bitcoin is there as that, keeps a check on that, I think that would be my perfect scenario.
Okay, just one more question, then we're going to announce the winners. Just your name and the question.
Okay, thank you. My name is TC. I had a few questions before coming to the show, but most of them have been answered. I just have 3 short ones. But you can answer them
Just
quickly.
add a couple more, dude. I mean, we're here for your pleasure, really.
Okay, so where is the best place to trade crypto as a South African? Because you can't even log on to your Coinbase, for example, right? The second question would be where to find ICOs. Is there an ICO platform?
Token sales, not ICOs.
Okay.
Carry on.
And then the last one, will there be any cryptos? What cryptos will be on the GT247 platform? And thank you for the ticket. I was one of those that got those.
Cool. So, Paul, you can answer that last question when you come up and announce the winners. The first,
I'll answer it real quick because two of them I don't know. Question 2 and question 3, I have absolutely no idea. Question 1, I really don't want to select an exchange. All I will say is when I was trading Bitcoin, and at the time it was only Bitcoin, I used BitMax. That's what I used, and there are, there might be KYC issues with some of them. I think that one you're okay. But if it's a geographical thing, look into getting a VPN, and that will help you with your geographical location.
Thank you. Sorry, was there a middle question there that got ignored?
No.
ICOs? Oh, ICOs.
ICOs, yes.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't touch them. I don't care for them. I have no idea where you would even buy them other than altcoin exchanges after the fact. But I have no idea how you would source a pre-sale ICO. I've never even considered looking into it. I consider them all unlicensed, unregistered securities.
By the way, as American citizens, I don't know if Tone and I can even answer that question safely anymore, because the government might say we were involved in an ICO at one time and arrest us. Because they're getting really strict with these ICOs. If you're involved with these ICOs in the United States, in the last few days, some news has come out that you better watch your back. If some of these ICOs are, most of them are total scams. So if you're somehow involved in promoting them, you can get in trouble with the United States government now. But I don't know where to get I avoid ICOs like the plague. I avoid them like the plague.
So if you want to buy Bitcoin, the best place in South Africa right now is Luna.com. Once you have Bitcoin, you can then go to something like Shapeshift.io or Changely.com, or even move your Bitcoin to Poloniex or something like that. So the best place to start is to get Bitcoin. Once you got Bitcoin, Shapeshift or Changely or Poloniex.
Yeah, Jax is a good wallet to Shapeshift.
Or Jax, yeah. Jax allows you Shapeshift in the wallet.
Farzam, and then we'll do the announcement.
Question to all of you. Very quickly, what is the main source of information you guys use for crypto news?
Farzan, it's great to meet you in person, by the way. He's been on my show before. I love YouTube videos. I love the World Crypto Network. I am part of that, so I'm biased. But Twitter, there are just some great guys to follow on Twitter. Try to diversify who you follow on Twitter. You don't have to like all the people. It's good to get different opinions, but Twitter is the ultimate source of crypto news. That's how I've been updated with this Binance situation, which might not be a full hack after all. But again, you get up to the minute stuff. There's some great personalities on there, like Tone Vays, like Vinnie Lingham, who's from South Africa. Who else can I think of? Money Triggs. Follow me at Tech.
Whale Panda. Whale Panda is usually on top of this stuff very well.
Yeah. I've just check out who some of the big names follow. You'll get the hang of it. But yeah, Twitter is the greatest.
Okay, wait, I'll freak you guys out. Bitcoin.com.
Oh God. I disagree with that one.
So the other thing that I do is I always triangulate, so that there's no one source of truth. So if you hear the rumbling about like Telegram doing a token sale, for instance, get 3 sources of independent reference mentioning this on Twitter, then speak to people in person. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why? And then do the research. Get onto Telegram and find the group that they have there or whatever, But triangulate to get to the truth, because quite frankly, there's so much bullshit out there that there isn't much truth to be said. So how do you know, or how do you find the truth? So my personal approach is to triangulate between sources of potential truth to get to the truth.
Absolutely. Can I comment on that a little bit? So here's the thing, right? Like, what information are you looking for? Are you looking for breaking news because it affects your trading? Or are you looking for understanding of the news because it affects your long-term position? So with me, I am the source of the news because I analyze the news that has already been identified in the marketplace. So right now, I'm not scrambling to figure out why the market dropped because I am not actively trading Bitcoin. That's not important to me. What's important to me is when there is a consensus on what big news happened today, it's then my job every morning to try and analyze that news for the person to properly assess their portfolios for the long term. That's what I do. And at the same time, I provide technical signals, but I don't go out searching for what just dropped the market. I use my technical analysis that told me 3 days ago, hey, there could be a 1 to 4 day correction. I have no idea how big the correction is going to be, but I have warned all of my consistent followers to be very, very careful with long Bitcoin at the moment, even though I was still bullish and looking for higher prices soon. So it really depends on what the news means to you personally, based on either your investment strategy or your general understanding of the ecosystem.
Great stuff. So I'm just going to call Paul up on stage to announce the winners. Cool. Yeah. If your name gets called out, please come up to get your prize.
Thanks, Matt. I think everybody's been waiting for this moment this evening. I've been kicked out of a space in announcing the winners. Jessica will announce the winners, and I'll hand over the fiat or real cash, and that'll come into your trading account. Just on for Jessica.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for registering your accounts, and congratulations to the winners. Nico Walters, is he here? Congratulations. And Anne Dolinshek, sorry for the pronunciation. Is she here? Anne.
Cool. Any more questions from, okay, this lady here, where's that mic?
Pound that like button, people. If you're watching this live, pound that like button.
The lady there in the back, yeah. Go ahead. No, turn it on.
There. Okay, my name's Angie. I have a question regarding the Lightning Network, which you kind of brought in at the beginning. I know that a lot of people see it as like a big answer for fees and speed and decentralization as well. But my question is, which you guys kind of did touch on, but I kind of just want more of a direct answer. Doesn't the Lightning Network also sort of open up to centralization? Because as far as I know, there is trust notes, which people have, which will be sources of liquidity. And in that way, what is your opinion on that? Is it possible? And what would you see as an answer to that?
So that is one of the problems, where every time you open up what's called a payment channel, it's not an untrusted thing where you can just anonymously connect to one of those nodes. What's going to happen, and we already see it if you look at the Lightning diagrams of how the nodes are forming, that we are having these large nodes that have the liquidity to be able to pass through all those payments, because what happens is a payment will go from one to the next to the next to the next to the next person. And so now what is going to, and we already see it, that the larger nodes with sufficient liquidity are being formed. That means now that you're going to have a relationship with them, or you're going to have, whoever is connecting to those nodes is going to have to. So now that is going to introduce what's called a KYC event, because if you are a provider of that liquidity, you're going to be sure that a regulator is going to say, all right, you're now facilitating transactions or payments or whatever it is, and you need to know your customers. This is how regulations are going to be put in place. Right now there are no regulations because Lightning is just technology. So it is one of the risks or the fears that people have about Lightning. Now the answer to that is that no, don't worry, eventually everybody's going to have a node, and it's going to be quite easy to be able to find a node that doesn't act as this big central trust node, as you said. But one of the problems with Lightning again is that everybody has to have a node. You're going to have a computer running some software that is now going to be facilitating these transactions. And also, what happens when you switch your computer off is that everything is kind of lost. Your payment doesn't get closed out and it doesn't get settled. So there is going to be these issues. And also, finding those routes through that network is an unsolved problem right now. Even in the white paper, if you read the white paper, there's a paragraph that actually deals with the routing problem. And that paragraph doesn't actually say how they're going to solve that problem, how it's going to be possible for you to find a route through that network and be able to successfully make those transactions. So it's not that, if Lightning works, if everything that is promised around Lightning is successful, then it looks like Lightning will be cool if the nodes are sufficiently decentralized and so on. But we don't know how that's going to pan out. Now, right now, we hope that Lightning is several months down the line. I mean, that's what we've been hoping for a long time. But the reality is that that most important problem of routing has not been solved. And so what I'm saying is that I'm not opposed to Lightning just because it's different. There are real problems that are going to delay the rollout of Lightning till the point where we can all use Lightning. And what's going to happen in that time is that merchants and businesses are going to be creating products around other currencies, because Lightning is not ready yet, and Bitcoin is, when it becomes popular, is too slow and expensive. So this is how the world works. People don't wait for the best technology. They use whatever's available. And this is now what the race is. The race is to get Lightning alive. When is that going to happen? We don't know. And in that time, market share, businesses are going to be supporting alternatives like Bitcoin Cash, and it might be too late by the time Lightning actually is rolled out, that in that time there's going to be merchants who are already accepting Bitcoin Cash and so on. So all I'm saying is that Lightning has problems that haven't been solved. We hope that they will. And when they are solved, then Lightning might prove to be successful. But there are still a lot of issues around it that nobody really talks about. We say, don't worry, it's going to work. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be lightning fast, and it's going to be cheap, and it's going to be, unfairly cheap. That's one of the statements that people use. Okay, cool. We hope so. But until that time happens, if you're banking on that, then good luck.
Cool. So YouTubers.
I was going to say, I can take the other side of that, but cool. If you guys want to move on, that's fine.
So just before you do that, just guys on YouTube, I'm going to take a question from you guys. So please let me know what you want to ask the panelists. Go ahead, Tone.
All right. So I don't really know how to make this short, so I'm going to do my best. Look, Lightning is very new. I am not able to fact check everything Lorien says, so I don't know how accurate what he says actually is versus if that is something that somebody else said and that person needs to be fact checked. I also don't have the technical expertise to tell you the details of the Lightning network and channels. What I can say is that yes, every single person will probably need to have their own Lightning node. Now, a Lightning node is nowhere near as complicated as having your own Bitcoin node. While at the moment, a Lightning node might be a little more complicated because the technology is so new and it's so in alpha. But in the future, having your own Lightning node or vertex, as I would like to start calling them, should be something as simple as having a phone wallet for your Bitcoin. So you don't actually have to do anything, but it is yours. Nobody else has control of it other than you. And I'm expecting the computer scientists of Bitcoin Core to get that done. So what there is a consensus of in the Bitcoin environment, based on the people's expertise that I trust their expertise. I don't have to necessarily trust the person himself, but his expertise at a topic, is that on-chain scaling is just like, it's not even debatable. Like to me, it's not. You cannot scale on-chain. The simplest explanation I can give you is why you can't scale on-chain is that for the same reason why application tokens will never ever work in a marketplace. A Bitcoin transaction, the fee for a Bitcoin transaction is priced in Bitcoin. Your fee is always going to be Satoshis per byte. So the more valuable Bitcoin becomes, the higher the fees will be. Now, people like to say how cheap Bcash fees were when Bitcoin fees hit $100, but someone went back and took a look how the cost of a Bcash fee a month ago and the cost of a Bitcoin fee back when Bitcoin was doing the same number of transactions as Bcash. And what that person saw was the current fees on Bcash are even higher than the fees were at the same point in time based on transaction numbers in Bitcoin's history. So like, not to mention that on-chain scaling leads to all kinds of mining centralization and node centralization. So that's an absolute deal breaker. Now, what you say about the big Lightning nodes that may potentially be dominated by big players, let's say Amazon, for example. Let's say Amazon has their Lightning node. So sure, Amazon might require some kind of a KYC, but Amazon is KYCing you anyway because anything you buy from Amazon gets shipped to somebody's house. So there's already a record of some kind of a trail there. Not to mention that there is an inherent assumption that, well, if there is no Lightning, that all of these businesses are now going to accept anonymous payments. I don't understand this assumption. All Lightning does is give you a cheap, instant transaction eventually on a secondary layer. You're not obligated to use that layer. You can still use the underlying protocol. I'm very, very certain that enough trusted, anonymous players will have their Lightning only go up. And if the choice is either Amazon takes your Bitcoin payment through Lightning or it never takes a crypto payment, it really doesn't hurt you at all. There's this assumption that if there is no Lightning network, all of these businesses are suddenly going to accept Monero. That's completely not true at all. So all Lightning does is give you that option of a very cheap, very instant payment, and potentially even more anonymous, even though major players will not opt in for those anonymous Lightning nodes. And you can always run your own. That's the beauty of it. You don't have to trust anyone. You can run your own through your own friend that you know is also on the same anonymous side as you are. Again, but I don't know, I'm not capable of understanding the underlying technology, but because there are hundreds of people who are mentally aligned for decentralization and anti-censorship, and they're all checking each other's code, I entrust that this network is going to stay as decentralized as possible to the best degree in order to still get us, seamless value transfer.
Just a comment from Lorien, and then I'm going to take a YouTube question, one more question, and then we're going to wrap up.
So, again, this whole thing, and Tone, I really appreciate everything you say and all that. So I don't want it to feel like I'm just antagonizing you at all. But again, it's not as clear cut. What you were saying a lot there is that you hope and that you trust that the brains are going to resolve all these sorts of problems. And also, what we've really done now with Lightning is that we've really brought back the trusted third party again. So again, the whole idea about peer-to-peer cash is gone. That's why Bitcoin Core really does need to tear up the white paper, because everything that was around Bitcoin in the olden days is changed. But now, again, another issue with Lightning Network, and I'm going to raise this as well, because it's just to show you that these problems are not solved. And if you're putting your faith in it, that's fine. But it's not that you can be so sort of glib and say, I believe that this is how it's going to be, and so I have committed to this, and everyone else is wrong. One of the other issues that Lightning has, and I'll tell you, is that if you're not online, you can't get paid. So can you see now, if I was to pay you a Bitcoin transaction, you give me your address, I pay you, and then you go look at your wallet 3 days later, and there's the payment.
That's actually not true.
It is true.
The satellite initiative by Blockstream solved that problem. Now, it's not functioning yet, but it will be.
No, if you're not online, if your node is not online, you can't get paid. You can go and look at that. So all we're doing is we're saying that we're committing to a team. Can you see when I said it in the first place, that what you're doing is when you're choosing one currency over the other, you're saying, I trust that team because they have proven themselves up to this point. And we're not having the chance to critically assess the technology. So,
no, but Bitcoin Core is not a team. That's the difference. No, Bcash has a team because it's 3 people. Bitcoin Core is hundreds of developers around the world, some of whom are anonymous. You can barely get 2 or 3 of them to agree on anything. That's the difference. Bitcoin Core is not a team. Anybody can do it. Anybody can join and provide good information, and they can write the code. And if that code gets reviewed by other people that are competent in that code has a chance of getting into the next release. Like there is no team. People think of Bitcoin Core like a team of 5 people. It's just a decentralized group of hundreds of developers, which is completely different than, let's say, one leader in any other altcoin project.
Yes, but you're wrong when you say that Bitcoin Cash is 3 people. There are multiple teams as well involved there, and Bitcoin Core does have a small group of people who permit changes to that code base. So yes, of course, there's hundreds of people who are making proposals, but at the end of the day, there is a small group of people who decide. So it is about picking sides and your team and putting your faith in that team. That's really what it is. It's and Tone, you've admitted it. You don't have the technical competency to evaluate the technology itself. You're hoping that those guys know what they're doing.
Correct. And I entrust in the 500 people that are doing code review, and the top 20 or 30 people on that list, I know what they've done in the space before they got to Bitcoin. They've programmed apps like Signal, which is like the #1 privacy text messenger app around the world. They've programmed Linux. They've programmed this anti-censorship, decentralized technology that we all use today. This is what these people believe in, and they don't even agree with each other. But I trust that they can read the other person's code and say, hey, there ain't no way this is getting into the system. And of course, you only have 4 or 5 most trusted of those people with the actual key to allow that code in. Because if anyone can put any code into Bitcoin, the whole project would never even start it.
So YouTube's blowing up. Okay, so Ivan, it's a question from Ivan Barnard, who's also, by the way, the most active dude in the chat room. It's like, pick me. Yeah, so his question, and this, by the way, always comes up every time I do a show. It's about regulation. Do we need it? Don't we need it? Very short, yes, no.
We do, because without regulation, there's no way that we're ever going to be able to use these currencies in our day-to-day lives. We can hoard them, we can trade them amongst ourselves, but it's never going to become something that is functional and useful in our day-to-day lives unless regulators have put their finger on it in whatever way. And we hope they're light, but to say that this is going to be something that can never be regulated, it's completely like wishful thinking. Regulation is important.
Adam?
I'm going to comment on that. I believe that a person should have full control of their own money. I don't believe that the payment should be regulated, the payment itself. Now, if governments want to destroy Bitcoin, all they have to do is eliminate money laundering laws and allow you to use your Bitcoin the way you use your arm, unless you kill someone with that arm. That would be the worst possible thing for Bitcoin. At the same time, I think there is a huge failure in regulation when it comes to soliciting money from other people. I think that the current regulation that surrounds the solicitation of money from one person for their project from a group of people sitting in the audience is grossly lacking. So I am perfectly okay with the hammer coming down on the ICOs and all of the pumpers, but I wish there was a Rust regulation around how a person can spend their money, but more regulation about people trying to solicit investment from other people.
I agree with you, Tone.
Yay!
Hey, well,
round of applause.
There you go. We should end it that way. But no, I'm not into regulation at all. I think Bitcoin is a unique experiment. Let it run wild. This is where the big boys play, man. I think the governments, the government people who get involved in the regulation side of things, they're in it for the photo ops, for the virtue signaling. I mean, let's see it play out. Let people make mistakes, let them learn the hard way. I don't think it's necessary to have at least on the Bitcoin side of things, and that's really what my main interest is. The regulation is just it's just a show.
So sorry, my 2 cents. I actually think we need it because institutional money is only going to come to play when there's some form of regulation or framework in place. Where how and what that looks like, for me, it's like how do you give the man in the street rather, access to this whole fucking space? And this is what you're trying to solve. Shameless pun, check out centbeat.com. But seriously, I mean, we need institutional money to come to play. Bitcoin and the whole market cap of cryptocurrencies is just too fucking small. Your question?
Quick question for Tone Vays. What do you think of Bitcoin Cash Thunder?
What? I'm sorry, Bitcoin Cash what?
Thunder.
You mean Bcash Thunder?
Yeah. Bcash
I've
Thunder.
never heard of it. I'm hearing that for the first time today, so I have no comment.
No, I'm just talking nonsense. Just my real question is, I like Neo, and what do you think of Neo? So when I bought Neo, it was very cheap, and it seems to be performing while all the coins are dumping.
I mean, it's very simple actually. Like after Bitcoin had the success that it did, and those that missed out on Bitcoin or they wanted more, they decided to fork Bitcoin and make it, and they would, by telling people that it's better. I mean, that's how we got Litecoin, that's how we got Dash, that's how we got it's basically using the essence of what Bitcoin is there for, instead of helping and developing and becoming one of the core developers trying to contribute to Bitcoin, they decided to build a competitor. Then Ethereum comes out, and I think Ethereum is a totally useless technology, and I think it's very bad for the space. I'm not a fan of Ethereum at all. And Ethereum was the first really successful ICO. They sold you a token that didn't exist. I believe they broke every single security law known to man. But they succeeded in a way, right? Because the price of Ethereum is $1,000 or whatever it is. So ever since Ethereum, everyone has been trying to recreate Ethereum because either A, they missed the Ethereum train, or B, they got the Ethereum train, they made a bunch of money off the Ethereum, and they're like, hey, I can make more money by creating another useless platform whose only purpose is to build other useless platforms just like mine. So Ethereum's only use case is to recreate other Ethereums on top of Ethereum. And some of those, and some people have said, hey, you know what? I can do something that does exactly the same thing. And this is how we got Neo, and this is how we got EOS, and this is how we got Waves, and this is how we were gonna get Tezos, but Tezos, they couldn't even agree with each other, so they never actually launched. So all Neo is a competitor to Ethereum out of China. They do nothing different than Ethereum. They will tell you that they have better technology. They will tell you that they have better developers. But their value proposition is no different than the value of Ethereum. And in my mind, Ethereum has no global value add to the current system. Everything that Ethereum offers will be done much better and much more efficient with a centralized smart contract platform that can encrypt smart contracts, make them private, and don't have to charge you their own speculative stock to pay for the execution of that contract. Now, if you want to stay anonymous or you want to stay decentralized in paying for that contract, you have Bitcoin. Okay, Bitcoin has value add to society. I don't see how Ethereum does. And the more things get built on top of Ethereum, when Ethereum eventually goes belly up, the more things that are built on it, the more the social fallout around the world is going to be.
Okie dokie. So I just want to wrap up very quickly. Sorry, dude. You can come up. You're here, unfortunately. So firstly, just want to say a really, really massive thank you to Adam, Lorien, and Tone over in the States. Thank you so much. Please give them a round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, and then Llewellyn doesn't want to come up on stage. So one of our sponsors is this really amazing South African startup. Well, blockchain-based ICO. See, this is why you need to come up and explain your shit, dude. They've literally just done an ICO, and they've had a huge deal go down this week with, not sure how much I can say, but I'm going to wait for him just in case I put my foot in it. But it's Prosperity Prop. Prosperity Prop have been kind enough to brand some really cool shirts. This one's called, what is it? Crypto what? Llewellyn? Crypto Geek. Different sizes. This one that I'm wearing, I have 20 of them, and I have some caps. Check that out. So first come, first serve. As you come up to the top, I might just get excited and start throwing this out there. So come up and just give you 2 minutes, mate.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So what we do is we make it possible for the man on the street, literally, with 25 bucks in his pocket to invest in property. So we use the blockchain technology to create fractional property investment opportunities. Our software itself, we don't run the investment platform. We supply the software to banks and financial institutions, where they then set up these investment opportunities. So have fun with the shirts. There's lots of shirts and caps, and I'm happy for you guys to go ahead.
What differentiates you from banking?
Say again.
What differentiates you from banking? Bank exchange? I'm going for my brain.
We create the software that we provide across borders to absolutely any bank, any financial institution, any broker, anybody that's licensed to do that job. And from there on, BankX doesn't allow you to invest in property at 25 Rand a shot.
How is it legally binding? How is it legally binding?
You have to come forward.
Detail. So we can chat about that. It's going to take me forever.
Okay, so that's it. You guys fucking rock. Thank you so much for sticking around for such a long period of time. Next event will be announced soon, probably in this format. So if you haven't done already, please check out mattbrownmedia.co.za or .com, either one, to get notified of when the dates get announced, or on my Twitter at mattbrownza. Thank you for supporting the Matt Brown Show.
Fun.
Thanks, Tone.